relationship that we built with Buffalo Trace, we got a lot of really good reception in Frankfurt. Obviously being the first biotech company there, and bringing 35 high-tech paying jobs. We also want to work with the community, work with Kentucky State on some engineer intern programs. So we feel like it's a good spot, Lexington and Frankfurt alone, and tapping into some of these cities that, the bourbon market is huge here, tax revenue, and we want to keep that going.
Welcome back to the Middle Tech Podcast. You got Logan Jones here, and on today's episode, I got to sit down with Brandon Corace, who is the president and co-founder of Meridian Biotech. And so Meridian Biotech is playing in the bourbon space and specifically dealing with the byproduct of bourbon called stillage. So obviously bourbon is a huge part of Kentucky's economy. We produce nearly 9,000 barrels every day, which generates billions of dollars in impact and lots of jobs all across our state. But there is another side to the bourbon production process that most people never think about, which is that byproduct, that stillage. Every drop of bourbon leaves that stillage behind, and that stillage is usually dried out and shipped somewhere else, oftentimes used for things like cattle feed. And of course, as production ramps up, as it has over the past couple of years, that waste, that stillage, just keeps stacking. And so that's where Meridian Biotech and their technology comes in. These distilleries, these bourbon producers have been trying to find a solution for what to do with all this bourbon waste. And there's been lots of attention and companies spun up to try and figure that out. And so Meridian Biotech is investing $40 million into a new facility in Frankfurt, partnering with Buffalo Trace to take that byproduct and turn it into something more valuable. Proteins for aquaculture, so fish food, pet food, and organic fertilizer. And so this is also a very interesting story because Brandon actually moved the company to Lexington. He was based in Austin, Texas. So a very interesting perspective from a founder that was in a completely different ecosystem, and quite honestly, an ecosystem that is much more known for spinning out high-tech startups and just having a denser community of entrepreneurs. And he's had a great experience coming here to Lexington. He kind of talks about that within this interview as well. I got to know Brandon in early 2025, thanks to our friend who is an engineer at Meridian Biotech, Caleb Mentoka. So big shout out to Caleb for making this interview happen. But just awesome to hear about what it was like for Brandon coming into Lexington and how easy it was for him to get connected and how supportive the ecosystem was when he came here. So very excited for you guys to listen to this interview. This is an awesome company that's doing some great things in Kentucky and in a big industry in our state. So I really hope you guys enjoy the interview. Before we dive into this one, I just want to get a quick word from the sponsors that make Middle Tech possible. Before we highlight our sponsors, we'd just like to state that the views and content shared on this platform do not necessarily reflect those of our show sponsors. That being said, Middle Tech is supported by KY Innovation, the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development's Office of Entrepreneurship. KY Innovation exists to support and develop Kentucky's startup ecosystem, and we are proud to be supported by an organization whose mission aligns so closely with ours. If you are a founder building in Kentucky, you need to check out the resources that KY Innovation has to offer. You can find more information by clicking the link in our show notes or going to kyinnovation.com. Well, cheers to start here.
Cheers.
Thanks for sharing your nice bourbon. Yeah, this is awesome. Well, we'll just kind of roll right into it here. As we're staring at this beautiful Buffalo Trace bourbon, a lot of people see the beautiful, delicious brown juice, but they don't understand kind of what goes into that process and then the waste products that are produced from that process. So you just signed a big partnership with Buffalo Trace, the bourbon that we're drinking here, to handle some of that waste. So just kind of high level to kind of frame the conversation before we dig too deep, frame what you guys are helping Buffalo Trace out with through this partnership.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of people are interested in the juice, as they call it, not knowing that a percentage of that is their byproducts. So typically with the fermentation industry, you got byproducts, whether it's breweries, distilleries. So what we've found with our technology is being able to repurpose that into multifunctional ingredients into different industries. So there's a need on their end, obviously, with as these distilleries expand and get into the bigger markets and transitioning into doubling their capacity, tripling their capacity, there's going to be more of this byproduct. So that's how we kind of looked into this pocket here in Kentucky, and obviously it's a good spot to be.
Like, yeah. If you're into bourbon, there's no better place to be.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into more of the details around how you guys are actually handling that byproduct and what you're turning it into and why that matters for the bourbon industry and for the state. But I want to hit on this story that you told yesterday when we were kind of chatting about the interview around this reverse pitch competition. This is something I'm seeing more, at least in this area, from kind of larger potential customers for startups, as they're doing like the sort of reverse pitch where they come and say, hey, we have this problem. We want founders and startups to come and pitch a solution to it. And kind of walk us through how that led to what's going on here today.
Yeah, well, we were obviously working on some other projects throughout the country, and this kind of came up as a proposal, and through the governor's office, Kentucky Econ Development, and really, like we said before, it's finding an alternative to their byproducts. So they were looking for 5 companies throughout the whole U.S., us being outside, probably the only ones outside Kentucky. We decided to go for that proposal. I remember telling you, seeing it on a Friday afternoon, and it's being due on a Monday morning. So I think I slept about 5 hours that weekend, put it together, and not really knowing at all what that was going to do. Kind of being a long shot, but looking into that, we were one of 5 companies chosen. So it gave us that opportunity. Obviously, it was developed through Kentucky Econ and the governor's office, but it gave us that ability to sort of show our technology, what we've done. Nothing of commitments of, hey, we've done this before, we've built this before. More of just, hey, we want to be included in this. So that led into sort of being into the Kentucky Distillers Association. A lot of distilleries were there at that pitch, and that sort of opened up the door. And we went into it with, we like to do everything from a science base, is understanding what it is. So we kind of took it a step further before that pitch and actually got samples from some of the distilleries and tested in our lab in Houston, and wanted to be prepared, wanted to go into it and say that, here's the potential that we could bring. So I think, the difference there, what we were transitioning from and what we were pitching was sort of products based, not anything to do with energy, natural gas. Sure. It was more into the different markets that we were able to tap into.
Very cool. And help us kind of bridge between the problem that Buffalo Trace was trying to solve and kind of what you guys were doing or focused on at the time, and then how you kind of saw that opportunity to go out and pitch a solution for it.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that they emphasize that, us not being in Kentucky is the large amounts of production of this byproduct. And especially during the COVID 2021, it was kind of peak season, everyone drinking, and these distilleries were expanding, double the production. So they saw that as a problem, and really from the solution standpoint, there's not enough cattle in Kentucky.
So it was being fed to cattle. That was kind of the
cattle
default.
feed, yeah. So same thing in the brewery industry. They're taking these byproducts and, some of the distilleries are drying it down. Shelf life is stable that way, but from a sustainable standpoint and the future, what they're looking for, there needs to be another outlet.
Sure. Sorry, just to interrupt for a second. For those who might not know what the byproduct actually is, when you hear feeding it to cattle, what actually is that byproduct that's being produced, just so that people can kind of understand?
Yeah, it's same thing they do in the ethanol industry. It's a distiller's grain. So they're drying it down. They can feed it to different feed additives and things like that. A lot of it's corn based, so they're doing that for the cattle feed market. Here in Kentucky, we found that a lot of distilleries have to actually go outside the state and they have to distribute it other places.
So not enough demand in Kentucky to kind of keep it in a full circular contained within our own ecosystem.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, one of the things I really wanted to touch on as well is you moved the company up here to kind of build this whole pilot facility, which we're sitting in here today. You can see,
Yeah.
What do you call this behind us? Is it a fermenter?
You'll say fermenter. It's generic
Sure.
bioreactor, is
Bioreactor.
what we call it. But yeah.
Right. So we got to do a tour of this pilot facility, I guess, back in February when you guys were kind of getting everything rolling, and now you've actually officially announced the partnership with Buffalo Trace, which is super exciting, and we hope to kind of do some follow-ups once you guys have that up and running. But talk about, as an entrepreneur, you were in Austin, Texas before, which is kind of like one of those markets that's really known for its startup ecosystem and innovation ecosystem. So you moved yourself and the company from Austin to Lexington.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of dig into that experience. What was that like?
Yeah, we had really kind of starting up, having our R&D facility. We had it actually in Houston and then offices in Austin. And as this started developing, we were sending samples down, doing the test work. We had other projects that we were doing, particular with NIH, National Institute of Health. We were getting some grant funding, and then a project with DARPA. We started that kind of doing samples there, doing it very small scale, and then started transitioning into developing these relationships with a few of the distilleries, Buffalo Trace being one that we had been talking with from the start, and really developing that relationship with them, not going in there saying, hey, we're going to build this thing tomorrow, being very transparent with them and saying, here are the steps that we need to take. There's a lot that goes into it. So as we started building that relationship, we felt it was only right to move some of our equipment up here, some of the employees as well to help out. But making that transition's tough. You're moving some of the employees, you're transitioning into a totally different state where you don't know anyone. That was I was going back and forth, living out of a suitcase, and the timing was right for us. Location is great. As I mentioned, we work with breweries too. So, being in this Midwest area, we can tap into a lot of these different markets. But the transition from moving to Kentucky, Austin's one of those tech hubs as well. A little different than what we're doing, but it's a very competitive type of environment.
Right.
What we've seen here in Lexington and in Kentucky is more of that relationship building. So you're talking to someone new. In Austin, it's more of a competitive feel. Here, it's, how can I help you? How can I connect you to this person? So that's really I saw as a huge benefit for us as a new company coming in, and we feel like it's home for us now.
Yeah, it does seem like we have, it's been here for a while, but it seems to be gaining momentum, more of a biotech sort of ecosystem between research universities, and we kind of have this logistical hub being based where we are in the country and having major highways that run through our state, and obviously a lot of kind of industry that's set up here that kind of lends itself to potential customers and things like that. But back on Meridian, can you kind of talk about how you guys found product market fit through doing, you did, like you said, non-dilutive funding through grants for DARPA and NIH, and you did some other like international pilots. Can you just kind of talk us through how you really honed in on, okay, I think this is where we need to focus our effort for kind of growing the company?
Yeah, starting back in 2017 when we started that company, being involved with the ethanol industry, we developed this technology from a previous technology that was more in the energy space. That kind of pivoted us into, okay, instead of being in energy, being into products and finding the markets. And so we started one product there, and now multiple products from one stream. So, it was growing pains there, some headaches where you're pivoting the whole business plan, but looking into these markets that we've tapped into, a lot of companies, they'll look at this and say, okay, we'll just build it and we'll find our customers, we'll do that. We did a thorough market research that led into, getting into the pet food industry, aquaculture. So you mentioned some of the other countries that we were working with, having customers over there. Aquaculture is not a big market here. Most of it is produced in Asia, and then they're exporting to us. But it tapped into all the research where we actually did pilot plants over there, working with large customers. They're doing the feeding trials, and that sort of validated what we were doing from the standpoint of, oh, it's not one component, it's not just protein, it's, they're growing quicker, those type of things. And so, yeah, it was valuable information for us to kind of validate things. So Thailand, India, spent some time there to work with these customers. And these are customers that they buy it in bulk. They're looking at this, and really their transition from the customer standpoint is what we're able to replace for them. So we talked about a little bit about fish meal. That's a big replacement where they're taking anchovy, pelagic, those small species, and bringing them on land, drying them, and then feeding it to farm raised. Mm-hmm. So, it's not a very sustainable approach, and whether we like it or not, the farm raised fish is happening. Every single year they're increasing that. So we've sort of tapped into that market as looking one of the fastest growing food sectors, and being able to provide a more alternative protein, something that is clean label and more sustainable. So, and then obviously tapping into the pet food market here in the U.S. is massive. So we really we did heavy R&D on that. Obviously the NIH and DARPA has helped us with some non-dilutive grant funding, pay for some of this equipment, but also be able to provide access to biomedical research information, tapping in with universities, working with UAB, some other universities that have been very helpful to kind of gauge that we can show the customers, hey, here's what we're benefiting from it.
Very cool. And so the products that you guys are able to produce from this waste product is pet food, aquaculture, I guess like fish food is the simplified way of saying it. And then fertilizer is kind of the three main things that you guys are producing. And so talk a little bit about where this process, this technology kind of originated from. Like what was the origin of the company itself and kind of how you got involved with it?
Yeah, like I said, we started sort of in the energy sector and realized on our back end is we were producing these products. And what were they? Back in the day, we were like, okay, there's a protein here. Maybe this is our byproduct from the process. And as we started researching and doing some of these trials, and we do everything on our own, we pay for those trials, and we do it through universities and for confirmation, third party. So started from that standpoint, and then that's led into sort of validating things on that end. The ethanol industry, obviously here in Kentucky, there's a need for it. So that's what we were looking for is that need, not only solving it on the front end or their back end, and then also from a customer standpoint. So it's been a long transition from getting from the starting point to where we are now, and we continue to keep R&D and innovating. This is the purpose of having this kind of facility here. We'll always continue to keep doing the research and development.
Well, I think one of the interesting kind of parts of this whole model is you're really trying to find the highest and best use of a waste product. You hear a lot about kind of like circular economy things, but at the end of the day, it really just kind of becomes an economics exercise of like, it sounds like you're producing energy before. Well, can we realize more value by producing some of these, fertilizer, pet food, aquaculture food instead? And I think that's just a really interesting way to kind of take a process, take a scientific method, and then figure out, okay, where can we generate the best return from that? And now a whole new market kind of springs up from that. I think that's just a super interesting sort of way to start and build a company from there.
Yeah, we tried to also enhance it and be more efficient. You mentioned the fertilizer. I mean, we developed that really during COVID. We couldn't travel, we couldn't go out to these projects, and the team was looking at it from the standpoint of, we build one of these projects somewhere in a remote area. Well, they don't have a wastewater treatment facility. So how do we sort of reuse that waste stream from us, and how do we develop something from it? So our technical team kind of came up with that byproduct fertilizer, and where high phosphorus fertilizer that we are essentially doing a study at UK right here down the road, and they did a study on winter wheat, found how we're replacing some of the fertilizers that we have right now, and that market's changed a lot. Obviously, the fertilizer market with the war in Ukraine, that was a big part of it. They were buying from there. So there's been a lot of development there with the USDA and trying to, bring our fertilizer production back here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So we feel like that's a marketable product here in Kentucky. In fact, even talking to some people about selling to some of the wheat farmers here that supply wheat to the distilleries. So that's
truly
full circular.
Truly circular.
And people say that is okay. You don't have any waste. You're more sustainable. That's our proven concept now is reusing the water back into our process and then having that. So those are the type of things that we work on to be more efficient. So where we are right now, where we were 3 years ago, where we're going to be 3 years from now. So always trying to update that, not trying to chase anything.
Yeah.
It's you get to a point where there's a lot of things that we look at, different feedstocks, whether that's down in Mexico with tequila. We're focused right now on executing this project here in Kentucky. I've mentioned some of the breweries too. We're working with some breweries there. So we feel like this is a good focus area for what we're doing right now.
And I want to dig into the model that you guys are pursuing with some of these partners as well. Buffalo Trace being a good example. You're building a facility down in Frankfurt, kind of one of the first biotech companies really to be established in Frankfurt, and you're directly piping the byproduct from Buffalo Trace to your facility. So it's in proximity, right next to it. Talk about that decision to build facilities that are in close proximity as opposed to like shipping their product to a centralized facility. And is that kind of how you view scaling, is as you bring on new partners, you're going to have these kind of facilities that are sort of copy and pasted to meet the needs of the different partners that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, that's been our business model from the start. I think if you're walking into some of these partnerships and you're talking about doing 50 truckloads and trucking it out, is that sustainable? You deal with a lot of different issues. So our business model has been co-location, pipeline to our facility, and really from the standpoint of consistency, looking at it, each one of these distilleries is going to be a little different, and what we're producing from it. Very consistent what we've seen here in Kentucky. We look at volumes, we look at consistency, we look at the trends that are happening there. But like I said, the relationship that we built with Buffalo Trace, we got a lot of really good reception in Frankfurt. Obviously being the first biotech company there, and bringing 35 high-tech paying jobs. We also want to work with the community, work with Kentucky State on some engineer intern programs. So we feel like it's a good spot, Lexington and Frankfurt alone, and tapping into some of these cities that, the bourbon market is huge here, tax revenue, and we want to keep that going.
We'd like to take a quick break to highlight one of the sponsors of the Middle Tech podcast, Awesome Inc., the innovation hub in Central and Southern Kentucky. Awesome Inc. helps grow the Kentucky tech and entrepreneurial community through pitch competitions, a mentor-driven startup accelerator, the Kentucky Entrepreneur Hall of Fame, co-working, and the Team Alpha internships. Be awesome. Now, back to the show. I'd be curious some of your takeaways from working with the state and working with Governor Beshear's team. He's been a very just economic development focused governor and has brought a lot of investment and a lot of jobs into the state. What were some of your takeaways from those interactions and from how they kind of conducted the whole sort of process beginning to end? Yeah, I mean, to say the least, we didn't think we needed to get into, knowing those type of people, but, kind of doing it on our own as a business coming in. But it's been very valuable. Me and some people within the city officials, Mayor Wilkerson, obviously Governor Beshear has been behind us on this and understands the project. It's in his backyard. Mm-hmm. So
talking to him, his kids go to school in the city, and I think just that reception has been so great for us. And anything that we've needed or connections there, it's been really helpful. And obviously Buffalo Trace being in Frankfurt too, large tourism there for the city. But I think there's a lot of potential there in Frankfurt too. I think they're trying to grow and get some of these businesses to come there. And we look at it as kind of being a hub there. Having this facility, it could bring in other grant funding projects that we could be doing on the side. But really, the hiring process, hiring talent, and bringing that to Frankfurt and hiring in Frankfurt as well.
Very cool. Very cool. And talk about the facility you're actually building there. You mentioned it's coming in 2 phases. Kind of what's the timeline looking like for that currently?
Yeah, we're hoping to kind of break ground in Q2 of next year. Then we'll be in execution construction mode right there for about 14 months is what we're planning. And then, we start getting the process going there. We've decided to kind of phase this up. Obviously, a large distillery, we want to sort of phase this and transition into taking more. But, we've decided on doing a phase approach, doing phase 1, getting up and running for a year, and then leading into phase 2 and beyond that. So that was kind of the attraction for us is when you're looking at doing this it's always easier to sort of implement it and expand on an existing facility. So, it's right now we're in sort of that transition mode and getting into execution mode. And that's when we put the blinders on and just go for it. So, but it's been really helpful. Everything from the standpoint of what they've been able to help us with too, and getting into the engineering and doing all that. But that's where we're planning ahead. And then obviously down the road, we're looking at other distilleries as kind of that turnkey approach, being able to do that at multiple facilities here in Kentucky.
And just to walk us through a little bit more in depth on the model of putting these facilities kind of in close proximity to your partners, how does that business relationship actually work? Are you paying to take byproduct from them? Are they paying you to take byproduct from them? Is it more so somebody take this from us and there's no transaction? Or how does that side of it
Well,
work?
you got to make a win-win situation. So we have the ability to, offset some of their costs and do that. But there'll be a purchasing for that. And, we put that into our models from the start. We've known that. Mm-hmm. You have to make that win-win situation. You got to make sure that they're not losing anything from it. And, that's kind of our turnkey approach is moving forward. And, it's a bottleneck from their end. They can process it. They can do that. But our goal is, they focus on the alcohol production. We focus on the byproducts. And, we've become sort of experts in that field. So bringing this to other distilleries, they can see that, okay, this is a turnkey approach. It's the same thing. We've got our process that we need to do before that. But, a lot of that being R&D, working with our customers on that. We typically, nowadays you can get a lot of market research, AI, do all that.
Sure.
We've tapped into some of that, but it's also developing those relationships with those customers where you follow the customers. What do they need? What are they looking to benefit from it in these ingredients? So, that has been key for us is we've been able to develop good relationships. These are sort of strategic partnerships with some of these customers where, they're looking at it as replacing some of these ingredients that, especially now today, U.S. production is going to be coming back here, and they're looking for that.
Yeah. How do you look at building a moat with this sort of business where for something like a waste product, like how do you ensure that your business kind of, doesn't have competition come in and just kind of compress the margins on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, competition is always good. We know there'll be other people. We saw the same thing in the ethanol industry, whether it was anaerobic digestion, renewable energy. We've seen those come and go. That's kind of why we pivoted some of our business model is to get into market size where, we put 5-10 plants up we're not even putting a dent in that market. So we're looking long term for the future, and obviously we look at the size of the markets. We're obviously going with a larger distillery here in the first, but we're hoping to apply that to the smaller ones too. Some of those don't have the capability to dry this product down, and so we want to support them too. And we feel like competition is good. I feel like we're, sort of ahead of the game on the side that we're producing products. We're doing something a little bit different. But yeah, there's throughout the country, there's especially in the brewery industry, we're seeing that competition. But we're just focused on what we're doing, the customers that we're working with, looking at the market, and we're getting feedback from our customers too. They're testing other products out there, and they keep coming back saying, okay, well, this is a little bit more valued add product for us. And so, we can take a hint when we're on the right track. And like I said, we do all of our testing on our own. So we know when that product is going out to customers, we're testing it as well. So we're sort of confirming that and validating it.
Signs of a healthy market.
Yeah.
I'm also curious. So you came from Texas, you came to Kentucky, the Bourbon state. Were you a bourbon guy coming into this? And I'm curious what it was like kind of getting involved with Buffalo Trace, because at least from my perspective, that's like the pinnacle of bourbon production. So what has it been like working with, a brand that is so historic and has so much kind of brand value as far as the product that they make?
I'd say I don't know. Back then, I didn't know as much as I do know now.
I'm sure you've gone
obviously,
through a crash course.
being involved with it, I'm not an expert on the bourbon side, but yeah, it was interesting. I mean, working with the ethanol background and then getting into some of these, it's a different way that they approach things, how they handle the management operations, and it's been good to see that sort of difference. And looking at it, but yeah, I mean, not much of an expert in the bourbon. Enjoyed it once in a while, but it was more beer and tequila down in Texas, so it's not a big market down there, but it's growing. You're seeing distilleries pop up down there now too.
Yeah,
so
it's gone through a boom.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is just kind of the hub for it, and it has been for so many years. So
Absolutely. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, one of the final questions I wanted to ask is, as somebody that has come from another market and come to Kentucky, come to Lexington, what can be learned from your experience? And like, how can we as a state and as a startup ecosystem recreate more of this? You can take that kind of wherever you want to take it. That's a very broad question, but I think that's one of the more valuable things that we can learn from founders that come here from markets like Austin. I mean, that's a big deal when we get somebody like you that comes and calls Lexington home.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I mentioned before, the valuable things that we saw were just those relationships that we've been able to build with people here, open up the doors and saying, hey, you need to get connected to this person. And you just don't see that in a lot of places. And I think it's very underrated, I think, for this area. And I think as people start looking at that, and you've got University of Kentucky here, you can hire talent just like anywhere. And I think it's become a good relationship building on that side. I think as we've tapped into also, from a fundraising standpoint, we've had all outside investors outside Kentucky, and now we're gaining interest here in Kentucky. And it's opened up a lot of doors for us as we move forward. We've been fortunate to have really good investors long term since 2017 that continue to see the progress that we've been developing, and they're more excited than ever, obviously, with some of the partnerships we've been able to build. And so I think that can be included here too in Kentucky is find those opportunities. And I just think it's a completely different world for us, from Texas, and we were kind of on our own. Now we feel like, there's people helping us along the way, whether that's the city officials, whether that's here in Lexington. I think we'll always have kind of our R&D facility attached to, each one of these facilities that we're working on. But it feels like a good spot for us right now. And we're excited about the future too. I think Lexington has a lot of potential as, from an entrepreneur standpoint, those connections and, just working with the universities as well. So it's.
Yeah, and you guys, just from a city growth perspective, you're in one of kind of the up and coming parts of town here in Turner
Yeah.
Commons is kind of where we are today.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot to be learned from that. If you kind of look at where does Kentucky have a strategic advantage, biotech definitely being one of the trends that we're seeing right now. I feel like we don't necessarily have to wait for people to come here to be able to help them.
No.
It doesn't necessarily only have to be Kentucky entrepreneurs that were wanting to do business in Kentucky. I think signaling out to the market, this is a biotech hub. How can we find entrepreneurs that are building businesses there? And the thing that we always talk about with startups, how can you support them? It's like connect them to connectors, connect them to capital.
Yeah.
If you can do those two things based off what we have here in Kentucky, you're a lot more likely to probably attract those people to the state. And, if not, you're still helping out Kentucky-based industry. It's kind of how I feel like we should look at it. I feel like biotech's one of them. Energy is one of them that I'm paying a lot of attention to right now. So yeah, just some good takeaways from your experience here.
Yeah, and I don't feel like it's just because we're in the bourbon industry. Obviously, it's a very attractive for everyone living in Kentucky. But I feel like I've talked to other, owners that have businesses around Kentucky, and they felt the same way. So it's not just the markets we're in, and the industries we're in, but I think, like you said, it's developing those relationships, and those are long-term relationships,
Right.
and so we found that to be very, very valuable here. And as we go into these other cities throughout Kentucky, it's going to be beneficial to know those people. And, we're excited about it.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, it's been an awesome conversation. I know this was kind of a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad we finally got it done.
Oh, it's been great.
As we wrap up here, I always like just giving some space for the founder to kind of plug where people can keep up with them, whether it's for job postings, if anybody decides they want to potentially work for you guys, or just keep up with news, anything like that. Please let the audience know where they can find more.
Yeah, obviously the press releases helped with some things. It's just getting our name out here in Kentucky and elsewhere. But we'll be continuing to update things. We'll be doing the groundbreaking, and there'll be some news outlets out there. Obviously, continue getting support from the governor and Buffalo Trace on this, and continue to work with universities. Like I said, Kentucky State, University of Kentucky, and sort of integrate ourselves into those and develop internship programs and engineers. We're always looking for valuable engineers. We've got a few of them from UK that have been very helpful, and I think now we want to build this team here. So for the long-term future, we need to start looking 5-10 years down the road. And I think we're in a good spot here. So, we'll be continuing to update, local and statewide, and especially when we get in construction. That's when we start really getting busy and, getting the equipment out there and get going.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to keep up with it. Congrats on the success so far.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.